Since 1959, the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame has honored and celebrated the game's greatest moments and stars. The brightest representatives of the Hall of Fame in Springfield are NBA players. But there are always more key characters around the basketball than just those who go to the court to play. These persons are inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame as contributors. They must have made significant contributions to the game of basketball. And among them there are those who made a unique contribution to the development of basketball. The Converse All-Star sneaker first came out in 1917 and did not initially bear Taylor's name. That came about years later, well after Taylor joined Converse in 1921 and became a professional sneaker salesman. Taylor joined Converse's sales force in Chicago, although there are mixed accounts of what prompted him to do so. Some say that he loved the All-Star shoes so much that he wanted to work for Converse. But the Basketball Hall of Fame, which lists Taylor as a member, says that in 1921, he hobbled into the Converse Chicago sales office complaining of sore feet and persuaded executives to create a shoe especially for basketball. That fits in with other accounts that suggest the sneaker was initially designed not for basketball at all, but for soccer and a basketball-esque sport called netball. As a Converse employee, Taylor helped redesign the shoes and also became an advocate for basketball in America. He was a player and coach for the Converse All-Stars, the company's industrial league basketball team, and created something called the Converse Basketball Yearbook, in which the sport's best players, trainers, teams and greatest moments were commemorated. He also conducted basketball clinics all over the country. Taylor was so skilled at promoting the sneakers and the sport in general that in 1932, Converse put his name on the sneaker's ankle patch. This was no Air Jordan kind of deal. Taylor reportedly only took a salary from Converse and didn't get a commission from the sneakers that had his name on them, and nearly 100 years later remain the best-selling basketball shoe in history. Chuck Taylor died in 1969, the same year he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Even though Chuck Taylors are not used for basketball any longer, they have become a fashion staple for all kinds of people across the world. Converse still sells an incredible 270,000 pairs of Chuck Taylors every day. Phil Knight belongs in the Basketball Hall of Fame for the same reason Steve Jobs belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Knight did not invent basketball shoes or celebrity endorsements, just as Jobs did not invent MP3 players or digital music. Instead, both men were innovators who saw a great idea and made it better, and, just as important, saw a way to make a buck off it. Knight's big break came in 1984, when he signed Jordan to his first endorsement deal, beating out Adidas and Converse. Throw fewer bucks at Jordan back in 1984, and we'd be talking about the Converse Jordans, not the Nike Air Jordans, that are performing some sort of retail magic by selling more shoes now than when Jordan was at the peak of his playing career. Their work together forever changed the culture and business of basketball. Together they built an indelible image that ultimately evolved into the Jordan brand. By changing the way sports are marketed, Nike changed the way we look at sports. In no sport was that more obvious than in basketball. Phil Knight created an aura around Nike that's more powerful than any other brand. He performed the impossible task of getting the American male excited to spend hundreds of dollars on shoes. He went from the guy hawking shoes from the back of his station wagon to the guy whose company's endorsement deal is the holy grail in the business of sport. In basketball's storied history, there may be no single organization more synonymous with the game than the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. Originally formed from the Wendell Phillips High School, the team played in the American Legion League as the Giles Post, and in 1927 turned professional as the Savoy Big Five under manager Dick Hudson. Later that year, promoter Abe Saperstein bought the team and renamed it the Harlem Globetrotters. Up until the late 1930s, the Globetrotters were a serious competitive team, and in 1941 the prestigious World Professional Basketball Tournament in Chicago. With the acquisition of Inman Jackson in 1939, the Globetrotters began to work more light entertainment and comedic routines into their appearances. After World War II, the team became real Globetrotters, traveling the world and entertaining thousands. With players such as Guy Sosby, Goose Tatum, Marks Haynes, Curly Neal, and Meadowlark Lemon, the Globetrotters became basketball ambassadors, bringing their showmanship and goodwill to millions. The team remains as popular as ever. Known as the mother of women's basketball, Senda Berenson pioneered women's basketball as the director of the physical education department at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts. Berenson's major contribution to women's physical education, however, was her devising of women's basketball, a modified version of the men's game that she introduced at Smith in the fall of 1892 after reading of James Naismith's invention of the game in nearby Springfield, Massachusetts. Her version of basketball de-emphasized the contest for possession and full court movement in favor of passing and position. Players were allowed to dribble only 3 times and to hold the ball for no more than 3 seconds. The game spread quickly among girls' schools. From 1899 to 1917, Berenson edited the version of the rules accepted as official, and from 1905 to 1917 she was chairman of the Basketball Committee for Women. Her version of basketball remained standard for 70 years. The success of basketball also opened the door to other team sports programs for women. At a time when women did not hold leadership positions in sports, Berenson wrote and developed the official rule book for women's collegiate basketball as well as numerous articles on the new sport. Can a coach enter to the Hall of Fame? If, during the 1.5 seasons in the NBA, he achieved a result of 51-78 and was fired, and had 58% of victories in the NCAA? Yes. If this coach was an excellent assistant and theoretician of the game, who won in this role 9 champion rings? Winter, the innovator of the triangle offense, helped the Los Angeles Lakers and Chicago Bulls win NBA championships as an assistant to Phil Jackson. Winter eventually became Jackson's right-hand man, and Jackson was so impressed by his offensive system that he made it his duty to make it Chicago's way of playing. Michael Jordan resisted, but Winter and Jackson never backed down. Eventually, Jordan relented, and 6 championships followed. Jackson also took Winter to Los Angeles, where he was an assistant during the team's 3 straight titles from 2000 to 2002. Winter was not inducted to the Hall of Fame as a coach, but as a contributor. He was not always able to successfully apply his abilities in practice, but it was his philosophy that made a huge contribution to the development of basketball tactics. Vitale, also known as Dickie V, has been synonymous with college basketball for more than 30 years as the lead color announcer for ESPN. His unbridled enthusiasm for college basketball makes him the game's biggest cheerleader. His undying devotion to the coaches and his craft makes him the game's greatest ambassador. The unmistakable voice, the characteristic delivery, the personal dictionary of basketball terminology makes him Dick Vitale. He is one of college basketball's top analysts and his impact on the game's popularity is undeniable. Vitale began his career as a high school coach, winning 2 state championships before landing a position as an assistant at Rutgers and then the head job at the University of Detroit. In 1978, he was named the head coach of the Detroit Pistons but lasted less than 2 seasons with the club. Vitale then signed on with the upstart ESPN cable network as a college basketball broadcaster. A career and a legend were born. More than 1,000 broadcasts later, Vitale still approached every game with knowledge, preparation, and excitement. Dick Vitale also has his own video game. McRae was not a journalist or statistician, he was exactly a basketball historian. Weak eyesight stopped Bill McRae from playing basketball, but luckily his love of the game led him to become one of the game's leading promoters, historians, and authors. McRae's romance started while a student at Passaic High School during the era of the Passaic High School Wonder Teams. After graduating from the University of Rhode Island, he became public relations director at Rhode Island State College and joined the Boston Celtics in the same capacity in 1946. McRae gathered statistics and wrote articles for the Converse Basketball Yearbook, founded and was editor of the official NBA Guide, and authored the history of basketball for the Encyclopedia Britannica. He also wrote the 900-page Ronald Basketball Encyclopedia. McRae's early contributions to basketball remain in many cases the only records that exist for the game prior to the 1950s. He was considered the #1 authority on basketball's history and owned what was considered to be the world's largest basketball library, most of which was donated to the Basketball Hall of Fame. The harsh professional basketball of the 1910s-20s was completely different from the one we've used to. Basketball players of those years were called cadger, because that basketball was played on courts enclosed by wire mesh, or cages. The ball can go into out, forget about it, no outs. You can make a pass from the fence or throw ricochets off the ceiling. The ball is all the time in the game, not counting penalties, and there were very much the penalties. In such conditions, the tough guy role became special, and Tom Barlow, called Caveman, is considered to be the first basketball tough guy. Tom Barlow began his pro career while still in high school with his hometown team, the Trenton Tigers. Built like a bear and armed with an explosive temper, Barlow quickly established himself as one of the most physically menacing players in the game. Widely feared, he intimidated players and referees alike. He was suspended for half a season from the Eastern Basketball League when he punched famed referee Herm Betzel in the face. Barlow was an outstanding defender and rebounder, but could also score, consistently finishing among the top 5 scorers in the EBL. Barlow was unique among players of the era in that he was not averse to launching one-handed shots. Barlow played his best years with Trenton teams in the Eastern and Metropolitan Leagues, but he was still among the game's elite during his 3 years in the American Basketball League. Late in his career, he finished 5th in ABL scoring in his last full Major League season. Barlow was elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1981. When Larry Fleischer formed the NBA Players Association and opened the door for players to receive pensions, minimum salaries, as well as severance and disability pay, he allowed professional basketball to evolve into one of the most exciting and popular sports in the world. Fleischer was the driving force in the establishment of the free agent system, primarily through a 6-year battle fought in Congress and before the National Labor Relations Board. The result, the 1976 decision known as the Oscar Robertson Settlement, allowed the long-sought absorption of the American Basketball Association with the NBA. Fleischer helped establish the model anti-drug program and improve the average player's salary. Later, he negotiated the agreement that established the NBA salary cap system. A strong advocate of players' rights, Fleischer's legal work laid the foundation for today's great professional game. Coincidentally, Fleischer was included in the Hall of Fame in one year with his rival for labor negotiations, Larry O'Brien, ex-NBA commissioner. Equipment inventor, rule maker, high school coach, and athletic administrator, Henry Porter's innovations were vital to the evolution of basketball. In 1933, Porter designed the fan-shaped backboard, adopted for official use in 1940-41. In 1935, he pushed for replacement of the cumbersome 32-inch sewn leather ball with a 29.5-inch molded leather basketball. Under his leadership, high schools adopted the new ball in 1938, and later in the 1940s, adopted an even better composite molded basketball. In 1936, Porter published the first high school rulebook standardizing the game across the nation, served as the first representative for high schools on the National Basketball Rules Committee. In 1940, Porter became the first full-time executive secretary and editor of publications at the National Federation of State High School Athletic Associations, published the first high school rule book in 1936 and the first magazine-style State High School Association publication, the Illinois Athlete. In March of 1939, the Illinois High School Association Journal coined the phrase March Madness to describe the excitement generated by the Illinois State High School Tournament. Porter further evoked the excitement with a poem he wrote in 1942, The Basketball Ides of March, pioneered the use of motion pictures to study proper playing techniques. Next time, when you take the ball in your hand, remember that if it was not H.V. Porter, you would have played this kind of garbage.